Oh, yeah, it's in the, um,
All right, guys, thanks everyone for joining today's virtual Lunch and Learn. We are super excited to have George Tully, who is very passionate about sustainability and real estate, obviously being a real estate broker, right? So George, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're a real estate broker with App Properties, correct?
yes,
How long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business about 6 years.
Okay.
Before that, I worked in one of those consulting firms that if it would make you bored and me sad if I went into too much detail. It was a no fun job for about 5 years. And then very briefly, I taught. And when I was teaching, my department head, my wife and I bought our first condo, and my department head's husband was a real estate agent. We really hit it off. I was looking for other teaching jobs, and after we closed, he said, "If you want to come work with me, I'd love to have you join me." And I had just gotten a rejection letter from, I think, Loyola or DePaul,
Okay.
a newborn son, and I said, "A job opportunity? That sounds great." And I've loved it. I feel incredibly lucky that my partner Chris Gajero invited me to join him, and I've absolutely loved working in real estate for a lot of different reasons.
That's awesome. So your real estate journey has been about 6 years then.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And then 5 years of consulting before, and then you were a teacher, or you were looking for a teacher job?
I was teaching English and creative writing for 1 year in college, and I was looking to do that. And that's when, that was about 6 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. And
Okay.
that's coincided when my wife and I were buying our condo.
Okay.
And that's where I made the jump to real estate. And I'm very happy that I did.
Got it. Awesome. So then you work on a team, is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. What's the name of your team that you guys work on?
It's Gajero and Tully.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
it's just the two of us, but it's where we make a good pair.
Great. That's awesome. Good for you. Congratulations on that success. That's awesome. So as far as personally, you said you have a son
I have a son and a daughter,
and a son and a
who I'm
daughter?
bribing with a movie to keep quiet right now. They're down in the basement, and this is a treat for a weekday. So this is hopefully you may or may not see them. If you do
Yeah.
see them, it is not then the bribe didn't work.
Well, George, in today's world, everything goes. So when they're
Yeah,
jumping,
exactly.
we'll probably cheer them when they're jumping. So don't worry about that. So George, your two professions prior to real estate, talk to me about how that helped you, especially, obviously being a teacher, that's important as well. How did it help you with your real estate career?
Well, it's a great. The consulting part was actually it was helping clients in institutional investment, professional service firms find what they needed, more or less. And so while it doesn't seem like it's a direct correlation, it's getting people to tell you what it is they're looking for. And as you know, in real estate, that can be a tough thing sometimes for clients to articulate.
Right.
So I found that actually ported over really well, and being able to ask questions to help them put into their own words what it is they're actually looking for in their search or in the sales process. So that I found there's been a lot of carryover. In teaching is often an exercise in patience, which also helps in real estate sometimes. And those two things, teaching was it was just the 1 year, and something I very much enjoyed.
Yeah.
But I've definitely found that the consulting side has carried over to real estate more so.
So George, when I hear you say this, right, I hear you say that, obviously you had patience with the teaching, right?
Yeah.
And then articulating with the consulting gig, helping your clients articulate. Something that you have an advantage on is probably is listening, right? Like, so listening to the clients instead of telling.
Listening is a big part of both my past positions. Are a lot of kind of active listening, which is a term that gets used a lot, and turning off that part of your brain that just wants to think of the response and actually listening to what people are saying, because that's
Right.
when you can ask a really good question,
Yeah.
and figure out what the person, where the holdup in communication is. So that's just on a client relationship level, I found that's something that's been really helpful.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it sounds like it, right? And that's awesome. So, what advice would you give kind of the audience out there of stuff that you practice in your real estate career with listening? And sometimes us being entrepreneurs and business owners, George, we have trouble listening, right? We want to tell. So
I think that's a big, you can say less than you think you need. It's always, it's that instinct to jump in once you have an idea. If you let people talk, they'll often tell you what you need to hear, or at least give you a clue as to, what the issue might be. And I don't always practice what I preach, but I've learned that that's, I realize when I'm not, I have that switch where I realize I'm not listening. And that's something I do think can be really helpful with clients and with other agents, of when you're at an impasse and trying to find out where a point of agreement could be, or where we're talking past each other. That's something I don't think I would bring the same skill set to real estate had I not had those two jobs. I think they've really helped.
Great. That's helpful.
With communication. Yeah.
Yeah, we've always heard and been taught, right? The person who talks the least wins the conversation,
Yeah.
right? You practice that. That's awesome. That's great advice for people who are listening. So, George, we're going to jump into the sustainability in real estate. But before we do that, I would love to talk about your mindset. Okay. And why this is really, let's focus on the mindset of sustainability, all right. And how at real estate, why is your mindset so important to this?
I think in this, goes beyond real estate, but it's something that sustainability is going to intersect with everything. And I think that the mindset is being open to a change of perspective and the change that we're seeing, and the obstacles that we're going to need to navigate, and the mindset of and sorry if I'm being a little bit kind of too vague on this, but it's being open to realizing that we're kind of in the middle of a ground shift here, and figuring out what the next 5-10 years look like, and big picture in terms of sustainability and where things are going. It has a very specific relationship to real estate, and we can talk about, I hope to really get into that today. But I think the mindset of breaking the mental habit of thinking that, things are kind of going to be business as usual for the next 10-15 years, because I don't think that's going to be the case. I think there's going to be some changes in our building stock and how we value them and how we think about them. And so I guess that mindset is looking for ways things are changing.
Okay,
I think that's a helpful kind of lens for looking at sustainability in real estate.
And George, I had a fascinating conversation with you about this, prior to this call, and thank you for sharing your knowledge with me. So people understand this. Is this a passion of yours? Do you study this, or where are you getting this information?
Absolutely, it is a passion of mine, and it's something on about 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, right around the time when my son was born. I think it's very easy to get bogged down into reading the news, and unfortunately, there's a lot of bad news, and that's kind of always the case. But I decided to pick one thing and do it. And it was climate change, and it was sustainability. And 6 or 7 years ago, I said, I'm going to spend my time volunteering to try to make a contribution into helping out with solving this problem. So a lot of the times on my free time, on my afternoons and weekends, I volunteer with a group called Citizens Climate Lobby. And I've been doing that for years. And what I realized, the more I learned about sustainability, is how much directly it related to real estate. And it kind of clicked 3 or 4 years ago it doesn't have to be one or the other. I can integrate this into my own work. And not only does that give me more personal motivation and satisfaction from real estate, and I already love the job,
right.
but it allows me to bring more value to the table, to the clients.
Okay.
There's not a whole lot of people that are using this as a way to help educate their clients on home ownership. I mean,
Right.
there's a really fascinating, really interesting ways, and you're able to bring a different kind of value and set yourself apart from other agents if you can explain solar incentives or how
Sure.
insulation works or how they save money.
Right.
So that's where, a few years ago I realized that the two went hand in hand and there was a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
So that's kind of been the pathway here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's been a passion to you. I love that you said it's been a passion of yours. You made it your kind of one thing, right? Or
Yeah.
whatever. So your strategy more along the lines with your business is really being the expert in this field, right?
That's true. I will qualify it with, I would love it if everyone was an expert.
Okay.
My goal is here in Chicago, we just launched the Chicago Association of Realtors just launched the Sustainability Working Group. It's the first year. We've got tons of energy. And I think we've got some really exciting things lined up. Obviously, with all that's gone on this year, things are we hit pause a little bit, but
Sure.
we're so as much as I think that having this knowledge sets you apart as a realtor, I also think our industry is very collaborative. We are competitors, but if we as an industry are leading on this and bring this value to the city or whatever market you're in, that's good for all of us and it's good for the planet. So the sustainability group for Chicago is we want to be a resource for people. We want to help people bring more value to the table, help their clients save money, help make an impact on our community where we can be really proud of what we're doing for the city and helping to solve this problem.
George, what's great is we live in this, our industry, right, is typically like, hey, it's competitive, right?
Yeah.
But to hear you say, hey, I want everyone to be an expert on this because it will help the world, right? Or help
Yeah.
our market, it'll help everything is so inspiring. So can you talk to me about that? So why is that important that everyone does it? Give us the nuts and bolts of sustainability as an education.
Sure. So I think there's kind of two big pitches on this that are on opposite sides of the spectrum, and no matter where you fall on it, I hope it resonates a little bit. One, if you're passionate about the environment and especially climate change, it can seem like such an overwhelming problem that the psychological response can often be, what can I do? And as real estate agents, we actually have we have a unique position in who we influence. We all send emails out to 500, 1,000, 1,500, whoever is in our sphere. We touch a lot of people, and a third of emissions come from buildings. So our industry has a great opportunity to start influencing property owners to think differently about property ownership and what it means. And so if you care about it, it adds that extra motivation of what you're doing in the work that you would otherwise be doing. You can add this new dimension where you can be really proud of the changes that you're influencing on your clients in your sphere. So that's kind of one endpoint. The other is, even if you don't care about this at all, it's smart business. We view ourselves, I think the best agents, what they are to their clients is they're experts in home ownership. You don't want your clients calling someone else to understand how this new electricity bill is going to affect them. The way we power our homes and where that power comes from and how it's used efficiently has already started to change rapidly. And that's just going to continue for the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
And the policy changes and the incentives that they have on state and local levels is moving faster than real estate agents are talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's an opportunity where you can help save your clients money, you can improve the value of their home, and you can demonstrate to them that you care about the community, you care about clean air, about making our city healthier. So even if you don't have that other concern and you're passionate about other things, it's just good business. And I think what we'd love to see is get more momentum behind it, because I really do think if our industry is proactive in being champions about this, it's good for our industry. There's unfortunately the perspective of, oh, the agent only opens the door.
Right.
And frankly, that's true for some percentage of agents. There are agents that don't do much other than open the door. But there are fantastic agents that are able to advise their clients on everything from, how taxes work, how to get, how the best people to do any, construction or renovation on their home, to, understanding city ordinances. And this is kind of another aspect of understanding what it means to be a property owner. And it's one that's going to be more and more important to people in the coming years. So that's where I think it can really emphasize the value that we can bring to people.
That's awesome. So, George, a question before we go into the ways to integrate this into your business, and hopefully you can give examples of that to do. So you're sitting in your home, right?
Yeah.
You currently talk about, is your home, is your home sustainable? Is your home is like,
It is. So we are in a converted brick 2-flat. It's probably, including the basement, about 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
Our electricity bill averages about $40 a month.
Woo.
And that actually was before there are lots of steps you can take to improve the efficiency, and how much electricity and gas you use. And big parts of that are the envelope of the house. If you don't have proper insulation, if you don't have it air sealed, it's the equivalent of, running the AC with 5 windows open.
Right.
It's just, you're going to use more energy, and your mechanicals are going to burn out sooner. So
Right.
it's just money out the door. The other thing is there's all sorts of little tips around the house and programs, where you can take tiny bites that add up over time.
Okay.
I keep my toaster unplugged because I use it once a month.
Right.
That thing is sucking up, a few cents every day if it's just being plugged in, and you can do that across the house. The other thing that my wife and I did this earlier this year is we did put in solar panels, and I can get into that, kind of frame that as why the solar incentives are an opportunity for agents to bring more value to their clients. I'll get into that, but yeah, we did. We've made this home, we've tried to shrink its footprint as much as possible. There's also curbside composting, which is a kind of a fun, easy thing to do, and it's oddly addictive. But outside of energy usage, there's also other ways that you can make your home more sustainable, environmentally friendly.
George, if I'm sitting here now and I'm like, oh, this sounds awesome, this is great. Do I have to? Is this something like, walk us through this? Is this something that you rehabbed your home and had intention to do it? Or, hey, if I want to make my home airtight right now, is that something that I can do currently? Obviously, we talk about the compound effect of unplugging things, and we can do that regardless. But how difficult was it for you to do these things and adding solar panels? Did you do it at the construction, or can you do them while you live there?
So you can do it while you live there. And this is actually, I'll run through kind of some of the things that we've done at our home. And if you don't mind, I'll frame this as opportunities to strengthen your relationships with clients. One thing we did that anyone can do is we got our ComEd home assessment. Assessment is a terrible name for it. No one likes an assessment, but what it actually is ComEd giving you a bunch of stuff for free. They come into your house, they put in all new LED light bulbs, they insulate hot water pipes, they put in water aerators, They'll give you free programmable thermostats. All of that is for free. Now, from a marketing standpoint, that's the perfect post-closing follow-up. If you help buyers and you're looking to, while you're fresh in their mind, check in with them 3 weeks, a month after and say, hey, hope you're settling in now that you're unpacked. I highly recommend you get this done. It's free. It'll save you money over the course of your ownership, and it'll help make your home more comfortable. From a self.
Can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question on that? How many, and I apologize for interrupting you, and I want you to go back to your point you're about to make, but how many people take you up on that?
I think almost all, I would guess 60 to 70%. Okay. It's free. Well, and actually I shouldn't say it's free. You're paying for it. There's a line item on your ComEd bill that goes into this fund of money that pays for all of this. So it's free in that there's no out-of-pocket expense. But the other argument is you're already paying for it. You might as well take advantage of it. So when I explain that to clients, that is an extra incentive of, if I'm paying for it, I should get it.
That's awesome.
So there's some clients, it's not their cup of tea, and that's fine. But most of them, and I would say a growing amount, want to learn more about how they can lower their environmental footprint.
Got it.
And so if that's one example of, and for purely kind of self-serving reasons, we're a referral business. Mm-hmm. And I found, when I get most of my referrals happen within 6 months of helping a client. That's when I'm fresh on their mind, and you're always trying to do that. And so if you can provide them useful information that saves them money and helps them during the course of home ownership, during that first 6 months, year, that's a win-win-win. That helps your business grow, helps your client, helps the earth. So there's really no downside.
Great value add, right, George?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one kind of easy step. The other steps that you can take are the utilities, and this is Chicago specific, but there are variations of this across the country, will help cover some of the costs of those efficiency upgrades. So if you want to add more insulation to your walls, or you want to air seal, an air seal is just basically, it's a little bit more complicated than this, but caulking where air is getting out. So around can light bulbs, where windows, where sometimes there's a gap where the windows start to separate. But ComEd will chip in $400. So, you can do $3,000 worth of work. ComEd chips in, $1,200 as a rebate, in the form of a rebate, meaning you pay for it, you get the money afterwards. A lot of contractors will actually handle that paperwork on behalf of the client. But the payback period for those things are, sometimes a few months, sometimes a few years, depending on the extent of the work. But after that, you're saving the client money.
Right.
And you live in a house that's more comfortable, that doesn't have these big drafts, where the second floor isn't, 5 degrees hotter than, the first floor.
How many times have we heard that, right, in our business? And it's like, it's colder up here, like whatever. So got it.
And there's a neat thing that's run through an organization here called Elevate Energy, where they do a blower door test. And so they seal off the house, close all the windows. They run a huge fan in reverse after they seal off the door, and it creates a negative suction. And what's really kind of surreal is you can figure out where all the leaky parts in your house is. So you put your hand up next to a window, and you can feel the air rushing out. Right. Or rushing in rather. And so that's the way that they identify where are the leaky spots in your house. And from there, they can recommend insulation and air sealing and all of that. But there are these great programs out there that are, designed to help people save money and lower their footprint, and to incentivize them with money. And it's just property owners don't know about them. And that's where why should anyone else but us be the ones telling property owners about this? It's it's a natural fit.
That's awesome. And so, George, to kind of pivot to that is, let's talk about, ways to integrate this into your business, and hey, Pete, I do see the question come out, and we are going to talk about some tools and resources to learn more. So he is going to cover that. And other people, if they want to ask questions, put it in the chat room. We'll definitely get to them with George, because this is super interesting, George. I'm a real estate agent. I might be newer in the business. I might be a veteran in the business. I've never done this before. Okay. How are some of the ways that I can integrate this into my business? How are you doing it currently?
Sure. So this is kind of where it dawned on me 3 years ago. Is my partner lives in Evanston, and we are big adherents of I don't know if you've heard of the 32 touch program, where the idea is you want to communicate with each client or sphere member 32 times a year, whether it's a individual email, social media post, what have you.
It's in the red book, George, that we
exactly.
So,
And sometimes you struggle for reasons and excuses to reach out to people. And we were in the process of putting together a pumpkin patch location in Evanston. And like, I was just dreading it. I was like, is this what I bring to the table? Like where the pumpkin patches are? Like, gee, like, why? Like, they don't want to hear this from me. Like, and then it's like the person that tells you where the pumpkin patches is that who you trust with the biggest financial transaction of your life? Like, is this even helping me? Like, and that's what I realized. It dawned on me of like, I should be telling them about ComEd's resources. Like, yeah, it may not be the most exciting, flashy thing in the world, but at the end of the day, it's substantive. It helps them in home ownership. So the way that I think there are lots of ways that this can fit in easily with marketing. And this is something we're actually working with the Chicago Association of Realtors to try to develop this content. But first and foremost, and I'm not practicing what I preach because we don't have social media, but it lends itself perfectly to social media. A tip on Instagram, I think, or a tip on Facebook, and it can be a small thing like vacuum clean your refrigerator coils. If you don't do that, you take 3 years off the life of your fridge and it uses, 20% more energy. It's a small thing. You do it once every 6 months. And there are literally from big to small, that being a small example, to, solar. A lot of people don't realize between state and federal incentives, you get 50% off more or less off the sticker price.
Right.
That's a big one. That saves people 10 grand. That's a guess, but it runs the spectrum. And if you're looking for content for newsletters, social media, kind of stock emails, it lends itself really, really well, because a lot of the sustainability stuff is just bite-sized things. And it brings to the forefront to your clients that you know what you're talking about when it comes to homes. And so I think that's it does take a little bit of beefing up of knowing where those are. But again, we're working, especially with the association, to make that easy for realtors to kind of plug it into their own marketing. Because, I think a lot of us default to pictures of our own listing, and that's what our social media is or recommendations on different neighborhood bars and restaurants. And that, I think, those have some value from a business perspective. Sure. But also everyone's doing it. And I generally don't know, like, when clients, and I'd be curious to hear what other people think of, like, when they post, and we've certainly done it, of posting, listing pictures on our Instagram. I always wonder how that's received. And like what but I think this is, it's go ahead.
Yeah, George, I mean, I've been in the business for 20 years, right? So like, I've seen it all, and it's evolving so quickly that, in my opinion, right, they want to know who you are and what's important to you.
Yeah.
It's great that you have the brand that you can get listings and you do work, right?
Yeah.
But just touting that is different. So your situation here is you're like, hey, listen, the value that I'm going to bring to you is I've studied this, I'm living it, I know it, I want to save you some money. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of what your marketing stance is with this, with just sustainability, right? And I'm sure you're doing the other things, but right.
Yeah. And that's absolutely, that's what we've, that's what we think just adds just a really interesting dynamic to what, a lot of great agents are doing already. Outside of social media and newsletters, I think there are, and this takes a little bit of work, but there are great opportunities, especially when things are slow.
Yeah.
December of this year, and a lot of the solar incentives on the federal level, it used to be you get a 30% straight tax credit. Now it's down to 26%. On the Illinois level, it's a little bit more nuanced, but they'll give you a lump sum rebate that will cover anywhere from 15 to 30% of your residential solar installation.
Yeah.
What my partner and I did is there's great tools. There's one that's called Google Sunroof. ComEd also has one where you can enter in any address and it shows you if the house or property is a good candidate for solar. So we went through it. We spent 2 hours and typed in, our past clients.
Right.
And if someone we haven't talked to 3 years ago said, "Hey, looks like your house is a great candidate for solar. Just so you know, if the sticker price is 17,000, after all the rebates, your out of pocket's 8,000.
Yeah.
And your payback period is 5-6 years, and then after that, you have free electricity. If you're interested, I can tell you more."
That's
And
awesome.
some of the vendors, a lot of the solar companies, and you have to be kind of discerning on which ones you use, but they offer, I use Certizone. When I refer them someone, they give the client $500 and they give me $500. I give that $500 to the client.
Back to the client, right?
Back to the client, just say they can give it to them, and that's for self-serving reasons. That's $500 that just bought you referrals for 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. You got a
And
client for life now, right?
yeah, it's a client that is going to, when they're having drinks with their friends and their friend says, "I'm going to start looking for a house," you're going to pop to mind because
Okay. So George, in your business, right? You are using sustainability for marketing material, right? It sounds like you're using it for check-ins as well.
Yeah.
Right. If you're following the 33 touch in the MREA, you're doing probably a quarterly call to this person or something, and you're checking in with them with what rebates, tax breaks, you and I had a conversation on, right? New programs. Give us some examples of that stuff. I know you kind of touched on a couple of them, but what's an example that you can give us?
So those are so the ones that we've been using are, have been a lot of understanding as new policies and incentives come up, we let our clients know. One check-in we've done is with the solar incentives. The other is ComEd's, and they have more programs outside of just the assessment. There are ones where you can save money on your bill if you shift your usage away from peak hours. They have different programs for rebates, for taking away old appliances, and they also have, if your furnace goes out, they'll pitch in money for you to get a high efficiency one. Okay. We also do the, getting ready for spring and getting ready for winter, of ways that you can, changes to your home that you can make to save money and lower your footprint as you adjust your home for those seasons. So that's paired with other things too, of understanding how to appeal taxes, and understanding how to the other facets of property ownership. But this can be such a big one, so that it's not the only thing that we do, but it's a third to a half of it, is that sort of education.
That's awesome, George, and that's an awesome value add, and thanks for sharing those with us. What about post-closing or pre-listing? What if, have you had these conversations, George, where somebody says to you, "Hey, if I make my house a little bit more sustainable, does it help the value?"
Yes. And the one thing that we've started, and this has actually only just been the past 8 or 9 months or so, of recommending sellers get their comment assessment before listing, if there's time. I mean, sometimes you get a call and it's like, "We want to put it on the market in a week," and that's the case. There's not the time. But if it's someone contacting you in November saying they want to list in March, there are steps that you can give those people. The other kind of emerging trend that seen in the industry is getting certificates for high performing homes and starting to uh, highlight that for prospective buyers. So, I don't know honestly if it makes sense to put in a high efficiency furnace if you're selling the place.
Right.
That's a big expenditure. But if you have done the work, and this is kind of long term thinking of, you know, the client that I helped in 2014 buy their home that I've been talking to for 10 years in 2024, if they do have a highly efficient home,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much you can use in, especially in an open house.
Mm-hmm.
If you put down, if it's a house in the neighborhood and you say, this has this quality of insulation, these high grade mechanicals, its energy bill is 30% of what, most houses are. When you go and see other open houses today, ask them if they have the same features. You can
That's
use that as a tool to differentiate between your client's house and what else is on the market. So there's really great ways of framing this to set yourself apart on both the buy and the listing side.
awesome. That's great advice, George. That's it. You're bringing a ton of value, so we appreciate that.
And I can send you, the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance has wonderful information. They're happy to talk to literally, if your managing broker is looking for content to, have agents while we're all at home, MEEA, they're happy to present to anyone. They'll cover a lot of this and more in depth. Pearl, it's not Pearl Mortgage, it's a separate, but they're starting a new certificate program where if you think you have a high efficiency home, they'll come in and vet it and then give you kind of proof of authenticity that you can show at a listing saying this house performs better than 80% of others that are like in stock. So those are great tools to have. Not every home is going to be like that. We all have as is,
Yeah.
listings where that's not high efficiency, but if you're aware of it, it's a great tool to have.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, George, we started with what was your mindset, right? And you obviously did a great job explaining that. Then you said your strategy is obviously sustainability and real estate, on top of other things, but that was your main focus. Your system that you seem to be using is, hey, I'm going to give value content, through the 33 touch and also, the touch program that we have, the tools that we have. Okay. So so you obviously have a lot of knowledge. You've said, the ComEd was a tool, right? Google Sunroof was one. What was the other one the other two that you just mentioned?
Oh, sure. Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance has a lot of this information. And what's kind of great about all this is we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are dozens of organizations that have all of this content and guidance where you can go. And again, we're working on trying to consolidate that and be a megaphone for that through the Chicago Association Sustainability. We're a work in progress. We're getting ramped up, but that's the idea behind it, is that we can be the resource for agents in Chicagoland to learn about that and to use it as their marketing. So that's the hope.
Well, George, you have when you mentioned the Association of Realtors, you have the former president Tommy Choi.
Oh, fantastic! Well, no, thank you to Tommy. Tommy is the one that got I should have said this at the beginning, but Tommy is the one that launched the sustainability group. Sarah and I, Sarah McCarthy and Sarah Sousley, who are also in the car. And big thank you to them. We have 12 great agents that are really fantastic. Sarah and I are kind of the steering committee for the group. But Tommy is the one that got it going, in that when we approached him with the idea, he's the one that made it happen. So we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't for Tommy. So that is big thank you to Tommy.
Hey George, how does we're mostly realtors on here. We've got some stagers on the call as well. So thanks, Haven, for supporting again. But how do they get involved?
So we have our sustainability. There's a section now on the Chicago Association of Realtors that you can go, and we have some blog posts up there. We have some content that they can use in their own own marketing, and we're really looking to expand that because we think that's that is a way to both help realtors grow their business and, end of the day, make a difference. If we collectively, if there's 50 of us sending out these ComEd resources to 1,000 people, that's a ton of emissions taken out of the air. Even if just 10% of it do it, there's a real tangible impact to the collective impact that our industry can have with just those kind of small things. Yeah. So I encourage you to definitely to check it out, and you can just email me. This is my favorite thing to talk about. I have a standing. I will buy a beer if anyone wants to talk sustainability. I'll buy a beer, a cup of coffee. We can chat about it. It's I'm always excited to talk to people or answer questions.
So George, Sarah put the website up on the chat room.
Oh, fantastic!
As well, so,
great,
which is great. So thanks, Sarah, for that. So hey, George, what's a big win that you've had with sustainability and real estate as far as like a client or something like that? Like what are one of the bigger wins that you've had by making this a strategy of yours?
So I think it's, one, I consider my biggest one, the Chicago Association. That's just been a real thrill. And it's been, all the realtors that we have, it's been so much fun working with them. But one thing that, here's an example of something I think wouldn't have happened if, had it not been for sustainability. One thing that I think is my most successful tool is I do a newsletter every month through MailChimp. Mm-hmm. It's all my clients, but it's also every open house lead, anyone who's ever, every Zillow user, anyone who I've had any interaction with. And the open rate varies from 30 to 45%. I had an open house lead. I had no idea who he was. I hadn't seen him in 4 years. After sending one out, contact me about listing his home. I had, that is, I don't think I get that email if I'm sending him pumpkin patch stuff, that's and what stuck out of this has actual payoff. And I'll be candid. It's not like a magic bullet. When you start doing this, it's not like your business grows 30%, 40%. But you start having more conversations with your clients. You start getting more emails for your clients asking for advice on, electric work, on, what should I do with my roof? It's all of those things. And, we've really just started building this into our business model 1.5 years, 18 months ago. So we're at the early stages of it, but we're already seeing that that change in dialogue. And there's been 2 other clients that I would attribute to having, are solely attributable to focusing on sustainability. But I also think referrals that I've gotten from prior clients have become more frequent because they're reading what I'm sending them. And they're finding value in it.
That's awesome. That's great advice, George. And what I love that you said is how you framed this of like, it's not going to happen overnight, like anything in this business, right? It's being consistent and having the compound effect on it. So George, I cannot tell you tell you enough how much we appreciate you today. You brought a ton of value.
It was my pleasure. And thank you, Joe. Thanks for doing the series. It's very, very, it's great to have while we're all, pulling our hair out at the house.
So George, you said you're passionate about it. Where can people find you if they have questions or anything like that and they want to reach out to you directly?
Sure. Let me, I'll copy I have an app property, and then it all goes to my work Gmail, which I'll post in the chat right now. So email me, we can, Zoom chat, I can email people other resources. And again, what we're working on is is having the Chicago Association hopefully be that one-stop shop. And we're building it. It's going to take time, but that's we'd love for realtors to not, be able to find all of that stuff at the association. That's what we're working on. If people want to, if people are interested in that, definitely let me know, and you can email the association too. So if you're enthusiastic about it, let me know, because we'll find a way to collaborate.
And just to clarify, Tommy just wants to know the beer offer is not just one beer, right?
No, that's never been my strong point. Nope.
Cool. Hey, George, again, thank you so much, man. You could tell your passion's inspiring about this subject. So thanks for the time. We appreciate it today. Guys, thanks for everyone that joined in. This is recorded. I will post it to the YouTube page. If you have questions and want to see it again, reach out to me directly. Tomorrow, we have another 30 under 30. Rebecca Donatelli. She is from Mentor, Ohio with McDowell Home Source. She is going to tomorrow talk about how she's built a massive business through Instagram, how she's built her brand and her business through that. So I know Instagram and social media is the hot topic right now outside of sustainability, George. But if you guys want to tune in for that tomorrow, all is welcome. George, thanks again so much. Appreciate you. Stay safe. All right. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Joe.